So yeah, the shoulder joint is such an interesting joint, which you'll see today. One of those joints in our bodies where, it allows us access to our hands. Um, we also get a lot of problems in the shoulder. And a lot of the time when clients come and see me, a lot of the problems of the shoulder is basically because of lack of awareness. We end up doing these 9 to 5 jobs every day, sitting in poor postures. And then when we're doing physical activity, we overdo things. And hopefully today, with the understanding of the shoulder from both a physical point of view and a more alchemical point of view, and a little bit of a meta physical point of view, you'll be able to understand what the shoulder is, how you can strengthen the shoulder, as well as how you can do small things each and every day to prevent any problems of the shoulder. So, yeah, have we got any quick questions before we start? If not, we're gonna press on forward. Yeah. All right. So just looking at the comments. Yes, greetings everyone. So the shoulder complex, and it's known as the shoulder complex for a very good reason. It is a complicated structure.
Yeah.
But hopefully by the end of the day, we will be able to make it the shoulder simplex. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So, content of today, we look at the function, the bones, the muscles, the biomechanics of the shoulder, and some of the problems that can happen in the shoulder. Sometimes when we're learning about something, we can learn things a little bit more easier through the problems that we may have experienced because there's a little bit of relativity there. So let's look at first the function of the shoulder. So we know, based on the shoulder being a ball and socket joint, that it is a joint that really moves in all planes. So I'm going to show you, play the video in the background, and I'm going to show you how the shoulder moves and describe them. So we got flexion of the shoulder, and then we got what we call extension, flexion again, and extension. So that's one plane. Then we've got abduction and adduction. And again, abduction, abduction, and adduction, adduction. That's another plane. Then we've got the internal and external rotation. So that's internal and external. And then we've got the horizontal adduction and the horizontal adduction. Then my skeleton, I think he fractured his shoulder in the past, so it's a little bit stiff. Here we got what we call circumduction, which is basically moving the arm in circles. And not only does the shoulder move in those distinct planes, but it can move through and change planes at any time. So when we're looking at the shoulder compared to most of the other joints, it, it's kind of a interdimensional joint which can move in any direction. And at the end, a little wave from the skeleton, really basically showing that the shoulder needs to move in all of these planes to be able to give us access with our hands. Yeah. So because we've got 4 fingers and a thumb, we need to be able to move our fingers and our thumb and manipulate our reality and manipulate the space around us. And for that reason, our shoulder needs to be able to move in every single plane. When we compare it to other joints like the elbow only moves through one plane, mostly just through that one plane, the flexion and extension of the elbow. Same with the knee. The hip is also a ball and socket joint, but at the same time, the hip, because it needs to deal with more stability, it won't have so much mobility. So the shoulder, as we'll talk about later, the shoulder sacrifices mobility for stability. I think I said that the wrong way around, but basically what I'm meant to say is the shoulder would prefer to have mobility, and it will choose to have mobility over stability. And because it chooses to have mobility over stability, this is where we can have a lot of problems. So let's have a look at the bones of the shoulder. So what we can see here is we've got the humerus bone, and then we've got attached to the humeral bone is the head. That's just the end part. And on our scapula, we have what we call the glenoid fossa, also known as the glenoid cavity. Yeah. So as you can see, where it sacrifices mobility because it wants to move freely, it doesn't have a lot of stability within the joint, but the stability is made up by all the other muscles, the ligaments, and even some of the capsules and a labrum, which adds a little bit more depth. So on its own, it doesn't have much depth, but with all the other stuff, it increases more stability, but still it sacrifices. So it increases, yes, stability by having all the ligaments, but at the same time, it still would choose mobility, and stability is still compromised compared to other joints. So let's have a look at this labrum. So this labrum, this is just one of the examples with all the other muscles and the ligaments surrounding the humeral head, which is just the head of our arm bone. It's just showing how that all creates a little bit more depth and also a little bit more stability. Yeah. All right. So let's have a brief look at the muscles of the shoulder. So we got the rotator cuff muscles. These are basically the muscles that add stability to the shoulder. We got the postural muscles like the rhomboids, the upper traps, the rectus spinae muscles. These are having an influence on our the scapula and the thoracic spine, which helps to maintain us in an upright position. Because if we're all slouched over, we're not going to be able to utilize the muscle properly. And then we've got these other muscles which help to produce this growth movement. So whereas these rotator cuff muscles are all focused on stabilizing the area, these muscles are more meant for those powerful movements. So we will see here. I hope everyone can hear that. So we're going to take a deeper dive into the shoulder. So as you can see, that's the head of the humerus on the humerus bone, and that is the glenoid fossa positioned on the scapula. Both of these two joints make up the glenohumeral joint. Now, holding both of these joints tightly is the capsule of the glenohumeral joint, and this is where your problems like frozen shoulder arises. So here we have the glenoid labrum, and that allows the head of the humerus to fit a little bit more inside the socket. Without it, the joint becomes a little bit more shallow. So we're just going to add the muscles now. So at the front, we've got the subscapularis muscle, and that makes up one of the four rotator cuff muscles, each of them holding and supporting the head of the humerus into that scapula. At the top, we have the supraspinatus, and as you can see, where the bone is at the top of the supraspinatus, a lot of the time when that becomes inflamed, you can get a lot of impingements going on there. So just to stop it quickly there, so I'm talking about this area. A lot of the time through overuse, that can become inflamed. Anything that becomes inflamed gets a little bit more swollen. And as you can see, there's not much of a gap between the arm and that bone there. So that's where you can get impingement and a lot of problems occurring there. Just below the supraspinatus is the infraspinatus. That muscle acts as like the sister or the brother muscle, because both the supraspinatus muscle and the infraspinatus muscle will allow the external rotation. And joined there is also the teres minor muscle, which also contributes in that external rotation movement. So all the muscles at the back allow external rotation. The one at the front allows internal rotation. So let's have a look at the other muscles around the shoulder. So just to show you there, that is the long head of the biceps actually attaching to that labrum. So you've got the deltoid, you've got the lateral fibers of the deltoid, you've got the posterior fibers of the deltoid, and you've also got the anterior fibers of the deltoid. And so remember, with these deltoids are producing a lot of the big movements of the shoulder, where the other smaller ones inside, the infraspinatus, supraspinatus, etc., they're the ones producing more of the stability. Yeah, so everything works in a togetherness, which is why it's called the shoulder complex. Yeah, as you can imagine, the anterior part will allow you to flex the arm up and forward. The lateral part makes you flex your arm outwards, and then the posterior part there will make you extend the arm backwards. And so over here we have the upper traps, and that will help you to shrug the shoulder. All of the that muscle you can see is attached to the scapula. But if we take away the traps, we can see the rhomboids, rhomboid minor, major. So the rhomboid majors here, that's the rhomboid minor. Where we was talking about your big muscles that are doing the movement, then your infraspinatus, your supraspinatus doing the stability. These are the muscles that deal with the whole postural component. And without these muscles, along with the rectus spinae muscles working, you're not going to be able to access and utilize that shoulder in a full capacity. That also the lateral and then the posterior to shrug the shoulder. All of the that muscle you can see is attached to the scapula. But if we take away the traps, we can see the rhomboids, rhomboid minor, major. These two, both of these muscles helping to position the scapula. So we get a lot of problems in these rhomboid muscles, basically when we're slouched forward in our chair for most of our days on the computer. And here we have the levator scapular muscle, which can often get tight because of postural problems. Over here we have the latissimus dorsi muscle, and that muscle helps us to bring our arms back to our body, and also, when we're doing things like lat pull downs or pull ups, that muscle becomes very active. All right, so that's the muscles. Um, so let's have a brief look at the biomechanics. And what we can see here is, again, the shoulder prefers mobility over stability. And sometimes it can be an analogy where this is ball and socket, and this is the humerus. So sorry, that would be yes. So that would be the head of the humerus, and then that will be the scapula. Same way, this will be the head of the humerus, and that will be the scapula. It's basically just showing an analogy of it. It doesn't have a lot of stability on its own. Yeah. So when we're looking at what helps to increase the stability, we are looking at the rotator cuff muscles. So this will be the supraspinatus here. That's the So that one's the supraspinatus, which is here. That one would be the infraspinatus. That one will be the teres minor. It's just a cartoon analogy. And you can see these muscles are pulling. One second. Yeah, just another day on near Woolworth Road. But yeah, you can see that these muscles are really pulling the head of the humerus into that scapula. Yeah, so anytime where you got weakness or problems with these muscles, what will basically happen is you can get joint problems, pain, overstretching of muscles, um, strain. You can get even a little bit of like a subluxation where the joint kind of partially dislocates out of the socket there. So this is a diagram which is also basically just showing how, if it was up to the big muscles like the deltoid, that arm, as soon as you lift your arm up, that will just roll all the way out of the socket. However, you've got these muscles like the infraspinatus, all of the four rotator cuff muscles holding it down. So basically, as that's pulling up and wants that to go out of the socket, on this side, the supraspinatus, primarily you can see it really holding that head of the humerus, and that creates a rolling back into the joint. Yeah, so I hope that's clear, that diagram. Again, when you're also looking at moving the arm, we can see that it's not only important for the infraspinatus muscle and all these rotator cuff muscles, which will be around here to stabilize the shoulder, but we also need lots of a degree of movement of the scapula. Sometimes where you have nerve problems and that scapula is, the muscles around the scapula is not quite working properly, or sometimes where you have things like winging, all of these things can cause some type of, rotation of the scapula in an angle which kind of squashes the muscles or limits the movement. Yeah, and especially we're looking at this point here underneath the acromion, where we can get a lot of impingement as that muscle travels through here and then kind of under. If we've got any movement or any rotations or bad angles of the scapula, then that will basically start causing pinching, And after a while, because of this movement dysfunction, etc., that's why you see a lot of elderly people. I mean, especially over the age of 80 or so, where they will really, really struggle to lift their hands above their head. Also, just to note that, we get to a certain point where when we're lifting up our arm, the shoulder can only go so far on its own. But then when we start to incorporate the whole spine, the thoracic spine, what then happens is we can get more of a movement. So even if you was to, let's say, lift your hands up, sitting upright, and let's say you want to lift your hand all the way up, it's easier to bend back a little bit, and then we can lift it up a little bit further. That might not be so the case of sitting, but especially when we're standing, we can use in that extension of our spine, we can then reach a little bit higher. Yeah. And what you will see often in some people with limited movement because of their shoulder and the muscles not, working properly, what can tend to happen is they will start to arch a little bit more with their back as a way to compensate. So yeah, let's look at some of the problems that happen in the shoulder. So again, because we know that the shoulder prefers to be mobile rather than stable, we can get a lot of problems where we can fall, or in sports, if very exposed to traumas. When we're thinking about where our shoulder is on that outer part of our hand, outer part of our body, it's very exposed to any direct trauma. When we're falling, sometimes falling with our hands stretched out, we can displace that shoulder. But what we know is it's very common. Fractures of the humeral head, which is basically the head of the arm, And it's even more common as we get older, where people start to lose their balance, their whole vestibular system is a little bit messed up, being more prone to falls, osteoporosis, and other conditions can increase the risk of that shoulder becoming fractured. There's different types of fractures. They're all classified with numbers and depending on where they're fractured. But I mean, some of the general rules is they can be open or closed. Um, with the open fracture, that means that it's poking through the skin. You know, that increases again the risk of infection, etc., where you've got that open wound. Um, they can also be displaced or non-displaced. So what we can see here is that everything's, not displaced. It's within this structure. It's maintained its integrity, even though you've got the fractures there, where you can see with some of these ones, they're a little bit more displaced. And the reality of it is that fractures can take a little while to heal, especially in this day and age where we might not have the quickest access to NHS systems. So, for people that haven't got insurance or, with the prices of private, they might not get the quicker healing or recovery time because of they've been waiting for so long. Again, depending on what type of stuff has been done, how the shoulder is mobilized, how it's positioned, how it's protected, all of these things are influencing on how long fractures can take to heal. So when we're looking at again subluxation or dislocations, they can also happen through trauma, or in the case of subluxation, they can happen as a result of just weakness of the rotator cuff muscles. And when we're looking at subluxation, we're looking at the bones being in the joints still being in contact with each other. So this is basically partial dislocation, whereas a dislocation is it's definitely not connected with each other. And again, that can happen because of weakness of joints, muscles, and the subluxation, and the dislocation can happen from direct trauma, etc. So let's see here. Okay. So again, when we're looking at the rotator cuff muscles, we can have other issues with it. So, for example, you can get the overuse of the supraspinatus muscle. That might be even in the gym, lifting heavy weights and overusing it, not resting. That could be an older person who has to maybe carry their shopping up 10 flights of stairs. Over time, these muscles, the tension, they can become strained. As they become strained, they can lead to tears, etc. And in the elderly, where elderly people have a tear, and they might be too old for, or medically fit, I should say, to have a surgery, and they really struggle to lift their arms up. Again, we've got tendinopathy, and tendinopathy is basically it's just a whole process of the tendons of the supraspinatus, or tendinopathy can happen anywhere in the body, but in regards to the rotator cuff, this is where the supraspinatus is being constantly strained, overused. As we get older, they can become a little bit more inflamed, depending on if we're working even on the building site or history of bricklaying or whatever that hard work might be. A nurse lifting up patients in the old school manual handling type of way, that can become inflamed. And as that becomes inflamed, you can see the space, which is not very big at all, becomes more narrow. And then there can be more friction and, a whole cascade of problems. So this is just some examples of rotator cuff tear. This is what they will refer, as you can see, it's, fully across. the tendons there, where this one is more of a partial tear, and this one is more of a full thickness. They will cause the same problems: weakness, pain, inflammation, aggravation, difficulty sleeping. And at the same time, one might need the sleep to be able to recover from the problem, but they can't recover from the problem because they're not sleeping well. And that's where all your other interventions like anti-inflammatories, medication, and even, some cases, the corticosteroid injections, that can help with all that inflammation process. Only problem with too much corticosteroid injections, etc., is that it can over time weaken the ligaments, the tendons, etc. And people can become so overly reliant on it that, damage is still being done because the corticosteroids are just going to help with the inflammation and pain. It's not necessarily going to fix the problem. But people usually should take the corticosteroid if they've got a program in place so they can get stronger whilst managing their pain. And the injections are usually to help them do the exercises in a pain-free manner. And lastly, we've got frozen shoulder. So as I showed you at the beginning diagram, so you with the joints, the glenohumeral joint, the cavity, the glenoid fossa or cavity, and the humeral head is surrounded by a capsule, which again helps to further stabilize the joint. But there's conditions where the capsule can become thick and inflamed. So this can happen because of metabolic reasons such as diabetes. So I had a client, and this was a client when I was working in the NHS where I first realized actually how much of that systemic activities can influence the joint capsules of the shoulder because he had his diabetes was uncontrollable, so uncontrollable to the degree where it was affecting the joint capsule. And, I gave him a program at that time. It was a simple program, nothing that I expected to solve the problem at that stage. I'll go through the next slide, which will show you the stages of a frozen shoulder. But the one thing he did do is he had changes in his medication or had insulin or something quite significant where when he had his diabetes under control, I think it was actually just simple medication like metformin, but when it was controlled, he was able to freely move his arm. The shoulder wasn't inflamed, it wasn't frozen. And I knew it wasn't my intervention. I knew it was solely because of him controlling his diabetes. Other reason why it can get inflamed and frozen is trauma. So you can, if you fracture the head of the humerus or fracture the joint, the inflammation process can eventually lead to the joint freezing. And this is why when anyone has a fracture of their humeral head, there will be a point where mobilization, even within the pain-free range, even if it's very limited, it will be encouraged so not to make that area freeze. And this is a stage of stages of a frozen shoulder. So you've got freezing stage, 0 to 3 months. Then you've got the frozen stage where it's at its most painful because that's the time where the inflammation is kind of peaked. And then you've got the thawing stage, which is basically when the freezing stops and someone can return to, a normal way of being. In saying that, I've had people who's had frozen shoulder and with physio intervention for myself and with changes in the, not changes in the diet, but with remedies, natural remedies. I often send people even to Baldwin's to supplement whatever they're doing, especially if they're not on any serious medication, if they're just a general public, not on any medication. But with things like, for example, curcumin has seemed to work, or things like MSM. When they go to the nutritionist and when they're having treatment by myself, things don't seem to take that long. And I've got live cases which I could get on the talk one day, and they will definitely verify what I'm saying. And it's basically understanding that whole inflammatory process, which is another topic for another time. We will be touching on that at some point in the future. We've got that installed with electricity, but I won't go into that right now. But it just shows that it doesn't have to be that long. And I think as we become more aware of, there's always these superfoods popping up. We're always enhancing our knowledge on nutrition. There's these, even really brilliant young people out there who are, stepping their thought pattern, they're stepping outside of the conventional way, and they're producing really brilliant stuff. So yeah, these are some of the problems that happen to um, there's much more in different categories, but just to simplify it. So these are kind of a healthy shoulder. You want to keep the shoulder flexible. You don't want the shoulder or the joints around the shoulder, the traps, the rhomboids. You don't want these muscles to become tight because making them tight increases your risk of straining something which is already fixed together. So you want to keep them nice and flexible so they're able to continue moving through their full free range of motion. Yeah. You want the fibers to be nice and elastic, nice and hydrated with a rich, porous blood supply. Where we get too much tightness and thickness, things become a little bit more rigid, increasing the risk of our injuries. You want to keep the muscles nice and strong, especially the rotator cuff muscles. A lot of the time we're doing the big muscles or especially the guys in the gym, overdoing the chest and stuff, but we're not focusing on the postural muscles. Eventually, the imbalances are going to cause strains, pulling on our rotator cuff muscles. And we need to focus on that balance because when we focus on that balance, that is really the only time where everything will work in that perfect synergy. A well-balanced diet is important because things like diabetes will increase your risk of frozen shoulder and other problems, which will could lead to you being in the bed. So if you're on a poor diet, it can increase the risk of just everything feeling a little bit more tight, jammed. The fascia is not going to be in such a healthy state. The fascia being that connective tissue. And we know that nutrients flow through the fascia. So by eating poorly, by eating these dehydrated foods, it's going to make us a little bit more creaky. It's going to make us a little bit more stiff. So keeping a well-balanced diet is very important. Um, Learn to understand the warning signs of the body. No one gets a tendinopathy or pain in the shoulder just like that. There's always a reason. A lot of the times, the body is given many warning signs. So people who've been working on building sites or the old type of plumbers or carpenters and all these type of activities, they would have had the warning signs in the shoulder from, years and years ago. But, as humans, we adapt and we start to forget about these things. We ignore the body. We sacrifice our health for the money. So it's very important to understand the warning signs because understanding the warning signs and getting it sorted out very quickly rather than leaving it can solve a lot of problems. I see some people just in the community, and when you see people passing through your community, you see the history of how things manifest. And sometimes might tell them without encroaching that, maybe they should have a look at some things. But again, because of the awareness, they might not look at these things. And over time, they're getting worse. And then they get in these stages which are really irreversible. And they're not irreversible because they're irreversible. They're more irreversible because at the time when they were reversible, they still wasn't ready to do the work. Now that it's more irreversible, it's going to be much harder, and they're definitely going to be less likely to do the work because now there's a bigger mountain. What started off as a hill is now Mount Everest. And if they couldn't climb the hill when it was a hill, there's no way they're going to even climb Everest. So in that sense, it's irreversible. For the older people in the community, or when I do home visits, and I see older people just dicing with their health, the pride of not walking with a stick. It just takes that one fall to cause a fracture of any part of the body. And lastly is adequate rest. Adequate rest is very important for the recovery of the body, especially people training, especially people working hard. We need rest. You can do all the good things, but if you're not resting, it does become pointless.
So we got a few questions there. That was powerful information, Christos, because functional anatomy and understanding these structures is quite challenging because they're not really explained to us clearly.
Mm.
So
And it is having it explained in just in a simplified version. And that's what me and Sahu were working towards, just making everyone understand everything in the most simple way possible. Because it is simple. It's just understanding it from a simple point of view.
all right, so
Uh,
just a quick question. So the
mhm,
like inflammation, yeah? Inflammation like a strain or something, or let's say
mm,
edema then in the front area or
mhm,
on the scapula itself. How does that stuff generally
mm,
manifest? Just in one answer.
mm. It A lot of it manifests by overuse. Overuse, and that can be through lifting up heavy objects, overuse, or that could be repetitive activity overuse. If I'm, let's say, a bowler, overuse, throwing that force. If I'm a bowler who's not focused on the whole integrity of the shoulder and keeping all the muscles at that right synergy, I'm gonna overuse it. So it can be caused by weightlifters doing too much of the big muscles without trying to work on the smaller muscles.
So repetitive use of the area. So
Yeah.
the next question, Christos. What are the two best exercises to build up? Because before
Mm,
going there, in my mind, it's like, okay, because we're talking about injury, repetitive strain. What would be the best thing
mm.
to alleviate that?
Alleviate that, the first thing you have to do is stop aggravating it. You
Mm,
have to stop doing the things that are aggravating it. And that's what people find difficult because it might be their work, it might be their sport, it might be something they have to do. They have to carry shopping because no one else can carry it for them. But they have to find ways to stop doing the things that are aggravating it. If you can't do that, then the next best thing is to support the area. Um, One of my favorite ways of supporting, especially the shoulder. So when people come into the clinic and I want to add a little bit more support, I would use tape,
yeah,
and I might tape along the same muscles, like the infraspinatus, the supraspinatus, the upper trap, and I
yeah,
might tape along the rhomboids.
yeah. That's very effective, that technique there, the taping. To restrict the
Mm.
muscle usage is true. Give that space a little space. All right, Christos. I think we're gonna any other questions we're gonna ask at the end. So I'm gonna go through some of the anatomy and the functional aspect at the end. I'm not going to go too deep into that part there to start with. Yeah. Christos done a real good deep explanation, deep dive into it. All right, so I'm just going to go into the other aspects, more the esoteric and the metaphysical part of the shoulder. And we're going to start on this journey because, we're going to go more recent, then trod a little backwards and then give some clarity. So one of the earliest representations of the use of the shoulder in mythology is actually Christ with the ram or the lamb on the shoulder. And this is one of the earliest depictions that is found. And this is in the catacombs. You also have this representation here, as you can see, the image of Christ. And remember, when we're talking about Christ, there's multiple layers of Christ. When we're looking from a mythological point of view, then we're talking about a consciousness, a force, a spiritual power. So we have, as one of the early representations, or most modern, I should say, is the lamb upon the shoulders. So what does the lamb represent? So this is the age of the ram, and it existed between this time here, 2200 AD, sorry, BC to 0 BC, give or take 100 years or so. Then we have the ushering of the next age. So the shoulders in this case is represented a constellation, an age. And the age of the ram, which is the constellation of the ram, represents the head itself. And it's an interesting thing because it may represent the head, but we're talking about overthinking, concern, worry, thoughts. And we're going to touch into that in a few moments when we go into the more emotional and the spiritual aspects of the shoulder. But it's all to do with our thinking process. And then the thing transforms to the responsibilities that we bear upon ourselves, the shoulder. So when I see clients and we're working through the shoulder and there's issues going on there, I ask a lot of questions in relation to resentfulness, disappointment, how they feel about event in their life or things that they have to do that they don't really want to do. Yeah, things that you don't really want to do, but you have to do them anyway. So you just have to keep on moving. And in many cases, when it comes to the shoulder as an injury, from a psychological point of view, we're looking at the idea of not getting support. You don't receive the support. And as a result, the resentment comes in, the disappointment comes in, the lack of trust or the lack of the desire to step into a situation starts coming in. You get pure ache and pain. And a lot of the time, we're thinking that it's work related. And it is work related. I'm not saying it's not work, from sitting at the computer, your levator scapula, your trapezius, your sternocleidomastoid, these muscles are under constant tension. So you should know these muscles here now because Christos has brought them things to our attention. Maybe not sternocleidomastoid, because that's truly neck to shoulder to chest. But the same, supraspinatus, this muscle all back here, that, sometimes you have to massage and ache that one out. It's for the same reason. It's for carrying the burdens of the world, carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. And we've heard these sayings, we've come across these concepts. When we go a bit further back now, so now we've entered into Greek, we've come out of the Christian era, and now we've entered into the Greek era, and where we have, in this era, we have the true embodiment, I suppose, of what we see when it comes to this concept of stress on the shoulder or taking responsibility, and that's Atlas. And Atlas is one of the Greek titans, and there is a war of the titans between Zeus and Kronos, Father Time. Well, as a result of this war, as a result of the Olympians winning this war, um, some of the Titans, they had their punishment. There's before I say that story though of Titans, sorry, Atlas's punishment, there was also a few other Titans that were punished by Zeus. And there's a story that's not really known too greatly as we're talking Titans right now. So I'm just gonna go on a side one to come back again. But Zeus had a child called Dionysus. But you know Zeus is like having loads of children. He's what you see, like he's one of those deities there. And Dionysus was born during this trigonometry, or they call it the Battle of the Titans. Yeah, he was born during that time there, and because they was fearful that Dionysus will be the next king, the next one to take over Zeus's place, being that he's young at the stage here, so they decided to go and kill him. Dionysus is one of the deities that's known as a rebirthing deity, so he's similar to Christ. And there are a few others as well that have this similar concept to Christ. But Dionysus himself, yeah, he get killed by the Titans. So Zeus, with his thunderbolt, destroyed the Titans. The story goes that he created from their ash, of the Titans, he created humans from that. So according to Greek mythology, we are the ash of the Titans. And being that the case, then the humans who are created from this ash are older than the gods that came after. So the thing work out that even Atlas, because he's a second generation god or titan, humans are even older than Atlas by the sheer fact from the mythology that Zeus took. Yeah, and there's a few of them. So then we have, later on in the same war here, we have Atlas. So Atlas is a general in this war. And because he was most feared, most powerful, one of the biggest and the most strongest of the Titans, Atlas, so he led at the front. And because he done most harm, he took the greatest burden. But it is said that because of his nature as well, because he could have let go of the earth, or sorry, of the heavens, because it's not earth he's holding the heavens. And it's a funny old thing, because it's mythology. Because Atlas, if you can see here, standing on the earth, holding up the sky, it just ain't working like this. But then it does open scope for other ideas and concepts that we are more privy to in this modern era. Atlas himself representing the space between, a bit like Shu. Because the difference is, yeah, Shu's holding up the heavens, or not, but then he's not carrying the burden. He may be separating it from earth, from Geb, but there's not a burden like this. Like the Greeks just made this into a little burden, carry this weight of the heavens as a result of this war here. And generally, this is how we associate the shoulder. When we feel emotionally stressed, when we feel under pressure, we're going through mental torment because we're repeating thoughts repetitively. Yeah, all their muscles start tightening up, and it come like, say, we are carrying the universe, the whole of existence on your back. Some people, as a result, they end up being hunchback. So then their body starts to each go forward due to the tightening of the tissues. But then we come over to Ma'at. We're going to fly through Ma'at, because Ma'at is more so arms than shoulders, as what Christos was saying. So when Christos was talking about the shoulders giving the arms the opportunity to manipulate reality, The shoulders give the arms the ability to move through and take objects or reconstruct the matrix. But if this 3D, if this 360-degree joint is unable to do that, then our ability, and this is on a psychological, somatic, on a cellular level, how this affects one's subconscious being, because we are uttering words in the conscious state, programming our subconscious mind. So then if this shoulder can't do 360 or can't do the full totality of its movement, then subconsciously there's a limiting in our ability to control. So we're gonna go through that, but another time. But you see, I did come across Bess, because Bess is to do with protection of the family, but also a storyteller, the wise one. You see the depiction of Bess through Mesoamerica and this idea of the tongue as well through the Polynesian islands, the little Tuade. But at least we have Bess Pun shoulder as opposed to the stress of the universe. But then this Bess is actually prior that, predating the Titan story. And with Ma'at, it may be coming to the judgment scene. So there is a direct connection with the shoulders, the polarity between left and right, and trying to harmonize our heart with our mind. The heart being in the same shoulder chest area. But again, one thing we're gonna have to go through another time just to bring clarity to that. So true, the shoulder and the neck are closely connected. There are discomforts that you can relate and associate to both of them. So when we're looking at some of this more spiritual meanings, when it comes to, other than the idea of resentfulness, not wanting to do something, we have the idea of defending oneself against a condition. When you're defending, that just tightens up the whole of the body. When you go into this defensive mode, a lack of conviction or belief, again, can just tighten up the shoulders. When one is uncertain, again, the shoulders can just draw up. So these are situations to be aware of, that when we're in them, that we relax and empty out. And we're going to go through that at the end. Harm from other members. We have this flinch kind of response going on, where when we're in shock, that our body starts to just tighten up and the shoulders come to the ears. These are things also to be mindful of and to observe when we're watching. Even if it is a subtle movement, like you go to pick up a baby, yeah, just to throw them in the air, and the baby didn't really like it. So then you go to do it again, and the baby knows what's going on, and you see a little, but you can miss it, and you can retrain them out of it. But it's these things to be aware of. So then we have money-related issues. All this stuff is in the head. Overthinking some situation. Health issues directly. Wrote that down a lot with through what Christos was describing. And the inability to adapt to situations. You see? The shoulder giving one this ability to manipulate the world, so your arms can move freely through. So when you go into looking what the emotions are in Google, they just generally associate this to anger and pride. This can create tension that results in shoulder neck pain. Additionally, an increase of mental workload can cause extra shoulder tension. You may literally feel like you're carrying the weight of the world. That's the reason why we have this saying here. But it's the anger and the pride as one of the emotions Here we have another one: anger, fear, and anxiety. So when you look at how the body responds to emotional trauma and stress, if we're looking at the idea of inflammation and the body heating up, the areas where, let's say, where we have envy at the far right there, we've got almost no blood circulation going on, a little bit underneath the armpit. If we look at love, we have the free dantian, or the free spaces warming up or glowing with heat, the groin area, the heart, and even the upper dantian. But something like this, hold on a second there. All right, that's a bit better. Yeah, so if we're looking at fear now, because the heat, the increase, a lot of heat in the shoulder and the head area on the outside of the arms, let's say you are fearful, but let's say those areas are already strained and stressed, then the blood that's flowing to that space isn't going to be able to move through. So it's going to be stagnated in this area here. Same with anger. If you've got a lot of tension in your shoulders, yeah, already, your shoulders are already tight. You're already overthinking the situation. You've already done that. If you're now angry, then you're just going to increase even more blood to your head, more to your neck, and more to your shoulders. And it's only mainly a problem because there's not even distribution through the rest of your body, but because of the stress and strain that's already in these areas. So our emotions directly shift where energy or where blood flow. Yeah. So if we're feeling prideful, then we've got a whole heap of blood flowing in the upper part of our body. But when we're experiencing depression, you know, we talk about like irritable bowel syndrome. I know I've gone off here now. But you know, when we speak about like, yeah, irritable bowel syndrome or gut issues, there is no blood circulating, or should I say, there is a reduction of blood just about the limbs, but that central thoracic area is reduced. Yeah, so the main point is how we have an increase and decrease. So we mentioned shock now, being surprised, how that directly just reduces, but it increases blood in the neck and the head area. So different emotions are changing the way in which blood is distributed around the body. And in most cases, we already got muscle strain and injury in them area there. So we're having blood flow to a space which is already compromised. So that's just a brief description. The shoulders represent the burdens and responsibilities that we have in this reality. I suppose the Greeks did well when they showed the representation of the planosphere, the spheres of the heavens, where you have the 12 constellations and the journey that we have to go through. We have to go through the 12 labors, so to speak, in order to become connected or one with our being. From a constellation point of view, they kind of like miss it, but we do say head. Because, yeah, they do say head for Aries, but then Gemini is going down into the arms, Taurus is the neck. So we've missed out the shoulder. So Gemini, you can say, is between Gemini and Taurus as a constellation. If we're looking at the shoulder area, then Gemini is more Ma'at, if we're looking at it from that point of view, but also Libra. I know it's a funny old one there, but the constellation of the shoulder directly isn't clarified through the Western science. So I think that's enough of our esoteric. So as we lead into more of the Tai Chi and the Qigong stuff, we have the representation of the laughing of the happy Buddha carrying on his shoulder, all in that backpack there. You see that bag at the back? All the good luck, all the joy, all the wonderful things. Like an elf, the blessings that are bestowed. This laughing Buddha here, this happy Buddha. And the lower dantian is full. And that's not full from food, although you would think so. This is full from chi or from wisdom. The wisdom is filling up the whole of his being. And since it's so, then he bestows good fortune upon humanity and the people then. So as Christos done a good description there, with this range of motion, when it comes to raising up the arms, we have this complicated situation going on here. So this is why we have all these injuries going on. These are just representations of the muscles that are just supporting around the shoulder. But for us, practitioners of the way, for us living in this realm here, there's only a few things we really need to be paying attention to when we're aligning our structure, whether we're working, whether we're walking through the world, whether we're sitting down and just meditating in our matter. And we call this sinking the shoulders. And during the sinking of the shoulders, we have that same sternocleidomastoid that I mentioned at the front there, that attaches to the clavicle and attaches just behind the ear. And this is really when you're aligning up your upper part of your posture and you're tucking your chin in. As you tuck your chin in, so you're lifting up your head. As that takes place, then it's like you're activating, stabilizing these muscles here, even though this is not the intention, as I say, as a focal point. So that's just one phase. Then you have your muscle at the back there, which is from the occiput, the top of the base of the skull, all the way down to the top of the scapula. Yeah, all the way down from, so that levator scapula that's touching, let's say, the edge, the top of the scapula there. That's the second muscle that we're aware of. So as we retract or our chin goes back and we feel the neck activate, also this muscle here, levator scapula, also stimulates and activates. As we do this, we are depressing the shoulders and we're retracting the shoulders also. So the depression is from the trapezius. Yeah. So chin comes in, we drop the shoulders down and we retract. As we retract or push our shoulders backwards, then we have the rhomboids activating. Yeah. So main is the levator scapula, trapezius, and rhomboids. You can break that down further or less into trapezius and just the rhomboids. That you be sitting down and really you're just depressing your shoulders and retracting them. So for us who take this further, when we're practicing doing Tai Chi or doing some kind of activity, pushing hands or doing our Qigong, it's the same thing. We have this awareness. We have this awareness of the sinking of the shoulder. And at the back here, we've got this additional joint, which we don't really discuss too often, the scapulothoracic joint. And that muscle there is really sliding over the ribs. So it's a joint between the ribs, the muscles on the ribs at the back there, and the muscle on the inside of the scapula, and where the fascia and the connective tissue. And this really checks and allows for a stable motion that's going on. So from the side, we have our neck, head going back, dropping down of our shoulders, which allows for the scapula to roll down and then bringing together at the back there. And when we do all of this, and we're doing it, let's say in an activity, what allows us, let me show you, what allows us is here. This is the reason why this is here. Just from us, from this angle. Because at what point do we start to see the shoulder raise above, let's say, the the first rib? So you know what the scapula, sorry, yeah, the scapula, the clavicle, sorry. The clavicle is going across and it's just above the first rib. The first rib is connected into the sternum. So we're observing here at what point does it? And when you see the degree is not that great. It's not that great. So as a result, it's like maybe 20 degrees. So when we're practicing at that 20-degree mark, at that 20-degree mark, that's where we're really looking to stabilize the scapula there and then utilize the lengthening of the limbs and the softening of the elbow. So then we end up having more a secure and stable body when we're lifting and doing certain stuff, unless we're looking to strengthen the muscle through a whole range. But if it's a whole body activity, this is the way in which we check the body. So that when a force comes in, it's harder for that force now to redirect. But as soon as we allow our arm to come out, it's harder to maintain that stability when it's raised up. All right. I think we don't need to go through none of that stuff there. But this is the one of the main aspects for us in Tai Chi is this concept of sinking the chi. Sorry, sinking the shoulders. It's often saying sinking the chi. That this is natural for me to say. Go into more the esoteric, the inner, the hidden, the inner meaning. Inner aspect.
And I know there was a question about shoulder exercises and strengthening. I
That's
mean,
right.
Tai Chi is just one of those exercises that is just so good for the body and the whole system. You're not going to get any big problems with through the conventional exercises. But what's even more interesting is, I love my gym stuff, but it does become Tai Chi does show you sometimes how very unnatural a lot of these just big
Movements are.
repetitive movements are,
Mm.
and then just translating it into Tai Chi is a type of exercise which is very applicable to everyday life,
Mm.
but I find for myself, I love the gym and that's something, I won't be heading out of the gym anytime soon. However, if anything, I see it more of an advantage of
To know how to
just,
use that gym properly and to use
yeah,
to join them the science together. The gym had the
yeah,
body
yeah,
for
yeah. And I think, in the future, I just don't think Tai Chi is appreciated in the sports community.
but it's
And I
definitely
think,
getting there.
yeah, I
It's
think,
definitely entering in. Right. So
yeah.
I think Helen's got her hand raised there.
Hmm.
You want to
Good
ask a
evening,
question?
Christos. Good evening,
Ah,
Sahu.
hi there,
Yes, woman.
evening.
I'm doing fine. Thank you for the presentation.
Oh,
But I do
thank you.
have a question for Christos.
Mhm,
I noticed that you were showing the tape earlier on that
mhm,
reinforces the shoulder. Would
mhm.
that be a good idea for sleeping? If you're doing all the other
Ah,
stuff, like rotating and doing the Tai Chi stuff, and you're still having those
mhm.
issues when you're lying down, would the tape be a
Yeah,
better thing to have at night time?
yeah. I mean, it definitely can be, and the reason why I say it can be is who's going to put the tape on? That's the biggest question. Yeah.
But once it goes
I
on,
mean,
it stays on for it can stay on for a couple of days though.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, first, you do need someone else to put the tape on.
That's right.
Two, there are videos, and I can easily produce videos on how to put them on. With the tape, it's helpful. The main concept is on how the tape stretches. So, for example, I'll just quickly show you a quick demonstration. So, if let's say I'm applying the tape on, I don't know, let's just say I use these bottles for example.
Oh, they're pretty bottles, aren't they?
So a lot of the best way to apply these tape because they're very stretchy. So I wouldn't just apply them in a very non-stretchy way. Sometimes, depending on what area you want to support, you can apply the tape, and then the main benefits of the tape. You just got to be very conscious of how you're holding the joint. So I would want the joint to be as stable as possible, and then I'm applying that
Oh,
stretch. And then that is the stretch in the tape that gives it the necessary stability. But I mean,
okay.
these are using two bottles, so you're not going to fully appreciate it. But that's just how the tape works best.
And also you mentioned about the MSM. So you're
Yeah,
saying that the MSM helps to regenerate the cartilage and all that sort of thing.
yeah. Well, to tell you the truth, I would say it to you more simply. Um, it's just something that I've noticed that when I send, what happens is I would tend to send clients to places like Baldwin's or Audra in Planet Organics, depending on what area they're in. And I will often say to them, I've diagnosed the problem, go there with an open mind and ask them what they need. So I would say, go there and tell them the problem and let them recommend what you need. And I done that for quite a little while, especially with Baldwin's because they had different people in there. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, Audra, I know what she's going to recommend. And not necessarily because sometimes Audra will surprise me based on the individual. And MSM is one of those things that keep on popping up.
Okay.
MSM, the turmeric, definitely. The curcumin, because I believe the curcumin is a derivative from the turmeric. That seems to help a lot, especially with that initial start of that kind of frozen shoulder where it's kind of started. These are things that just seem to work well. So I'm not 100% sure on the ins and outs on the biochemical level of what's happening, but I do know enough that it's working.
Oh,
And they seem to be the things curcumin, MSM, and I believe that MSM is working from, it's that extra collagen that is provided in the body. Um, Things like glucosamine for like even the knees, the shoulders, that is also something that definitely helps the body it helps the joint pain, it helps the body to recover from whatever it's going through.
okay. Well, thank you for that.
You're more than
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
Uh, um,
More than welcome.
all right, Chris. I think we have somebody else who wants to ask a question. Is that
Uh,
Loxley?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
greetings, sir.
Right.
Greetings.
greetings.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you clear.
Perfectly.
Yeah, yes, excellent, excellent presentations, chaps. Very good.
Thank you.
Good to see, good to see, very good. Um, a question for Christos.
Mhm.
Triforces, okay?
Yes.
kyphosis, and we're doing all the postural correction with regards to stretching,
Mm.
stretching the front area, and also doing the repetition of stabilizing the stabilizing muscles
Okay.
in the back area. Um,
Hmm.
all the areas what you was talking about. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and I don't know what your view is, but my personal view is that okay, you're doing all that work, but
Mm.
also people can laugh because, as you mentioned, a lot of people
Hmm.
are still we're very chair-based culture at the moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they can lapse. Again, that stress what you was talking about, Sal,
Mm.
and people getting focused on whatever that issue is can bring.
Hmm.
Although you're doing all the work, but yet
Hmm.
still you can
Undo it all.
lapse into that. Sorry?
Yeah, undo it all.
Yes, exactly. So, what's your thoughts on the, if I can liken a word, like the bra support systems, what they have to keep that retraction in place?
Oh,
Because remember, you're doing
yeah.
all the work, but during the
Mm.
day, just to give you give you that mental physical connection.
Yeah, yeah. See, and this is where I would always favor tape over it. Um, with the tape, a lot of the time, the difference between the tape gives you more that proprioception. So it won't necessarily stop you so much from developing the bad posture, but it's got a little bit more give to it. So
Right.
you got the tape on, you can feel yourself going into the bad position, and
Yeah.
then you consciously correct yourself.
Yes.
And every
Oh,
time you move into that bad position, you will feel it's not right. The tape's telling me it's not right. You will correct yourself. With the other systems, sometimes they can give a little bit too much support. And as a result of it giving too much support, basically through the fascial connections, you're basically limiting or fixing one point. The body's smart. It will just move the tension somewhere else.
right.
So as a
Yes.
result of that, then you will start maybe developing lower back pain or even upper neck pain, depending on what you're doing or kind of the predisposition of your fascia. So I'm
Right.
not a fan of anything that provides too much support because, like anything, we still become naturally reliant. And then, an hour of work turns into 2 hours of work. And then that's when we can, get problems. If we're doing things for, let's say, a shorter period of time, then we might say, okay, that might be okay because you're not using it as much. But then again, the argument will be, okay, you're using it for a short period of time. Why can't you just keep your muscles upright for that short period of time? So that's
Right.
why I'm personally biased to using the support because I think support should only be used in the sense that we're working, where the aim of what we're doing is going to exceed the support. And that's
Mhm.
why I like the tape because the tape will give you enough support, but it's not gonna hold everything together. If things are really falling apart, you're
Yes.
gonna
Yes.
find a tape that's gonna start peeling, or you're gonna feel very uncomfortable with it,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know.
Mhm.
Whereas the other support, I think it's just too much. And that's from what I understand.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, sir, for that. Thank you. Okay, may
You're
I
more
ask
than
one more
welcome.
question? Is that possible?
Oh
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Brother Sal, one for you, sir. Um, the again, you've opened my eyes to the although I had an idea about it, but you give me the detail there with regard to that emotional connection with the different body parts. Is and I thought it was very enlightening. Is there a book what I could do for further reading? Is there any books what you recommend?
Oh, gosh. You got any ideas, Christos, for a book on that one there? Let me think on the because I was looking research
Mm.
on the internet, but oh, I got
Is reword that again? A book on more the um. So if you repeat that one more time,
What the question?
yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, the question's based on like the spiritual and metaphysical connection with regards to shoulder issues.
Mm.
Um, and Sal presented
Okay.
Yeah,
and gave
yeah, yeah, yeah.
signs and symptoms of that. I just wondered if there was a book out there, what would what
Hmm.
what I could reflect on.
I mean, I know a book, it's not specifically on the shoulders from, I can't pinpoint
Yeah,
in my
not
mind.
specific, the body, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Caroline Myth,
Sorry?
um, Caroline Myth, Anatomy of the Spirit,
Okay.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, I think she refers to
Is that
um, manifestations and problems with, um, she does a lot of links with archetypes and emotions and how they manifest in the body. And then she talks about, let's say, part of even the chakra system. And then she utilizes things like the tree of life
oh
in regards to people's emotions, um, whether they're going through victimhood, whether they're going through like a a sacrificial stage, or she I think, to mine, that's the closest book from my library, which kind of
right.
touches on those aspects. Caroline Myss, The Anatomy of the Spirit,
What's
and
the
she talks,
what's the surname? Miss.
uh,
How are you
yeah,
spelling it?
I think Jamie just put that
NYSS.
in. Did you just put that into the chat?
Let me see.
Yeah.
This one,
7 stages of power and healing. Is that the book there? The anatomy of the spirit.
Spirit.
That's interesting, you know, because I haven't. Oh man, the the only book that for some reason comes to my mind is the tuning of the diamond, but
Mm.
I don't recall the actual author, and I borrowed that book out a little while ago.
Yeah, man. Fling that in the chat, man. Chat.
I have to look for that one there. No, the actual author, the tuning of the diamond. But
Yeah.
for myself personally, it's a challenge because we go through trial and error and observation. And because I'm in a clinical situation, I'm
Yeah.
able to observe and ask questions. And because I've been doing it over 20 years, it just gives me a little clarity. But in the beginning, when I was doing the searching, looking for, trying to understand, to see if I could find images that describe the emotions connected to the shoulders or to any part of the body. There are
Mhm.
a few books on Amazon that I saw there, but personally, I have not read them because of my where I am. I just
Mm.
understand, and this is what
Can
I
I say,
go on,
um,
mum.
there's a book on trauma, there's books on trauma, which also in the roundabout way talks about the effects on the outside world on you. And there's quite a few writers on trauma, and that also opens up another avenue.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mm.
that
Thank
does.
you, Ellen.
Yeah,
I just quickly screen, just quickly.
yeah. Okay, go on.
Um, so yeah, that's the book. I don't know if you, hopefully you can see it, but you can see Unified East and Western Healing, um, in the Breakthrough View, Mind, Body, and Spirit, demonstrates that the 7 stages through which everyone must pass in search of conscious and spiritual maturity. Far forward,
There are a
uncovers
few
strong
books
evidence that
that I
each
said.
illness we develop corresponds to a specific pattern of emotion and psychological stress, and then financial stress affecting the lower back. So yeah,
Mm.
that is, it was it's a good read. I probably need to read it again myself. But yeah, I remember it being a really good book.
Yeah. Thank you, chaps, and thank you, Helen. Peace and many blessings to both
Yes.
All
of
right,
you.
thank
All
you,
right.
Greg.
Before we go to Shirley, before Shirley answers the question, what I was going to say as well is that we have ways to decode the stuff that we need to understand. Just give me a moment, Shirley. Um, we know we rely upon books and texts, And we get to a stage in our development where we have to rely upon an outside source because we don't understand how to understand certain things. So the reason why I pause as well is because we're looking at in order to determine how a body part is going to affect us psychologically, we're looking at the function of that area there and what it does. When you understand through just common sense observation what the thing does, that's why when we're talking about the arms controlling the world, and if the arms aren't able to control the world or move through it, then we're not able to psychologically control or manifest within the 3D reality. We're like limited because of what's going on inside. But the issue is, oh, so thank you, Jamie. You see, tune in the diamond. Wow, yeah. We're unable to. So the idea is, if we're going to try to unlock this on our own journey and take our own inner path, then we have to understand what do these things mean to us? What does the shoulder mean to you? When we understand what that means to you as your own interpretation of it, then we know, say, this is what is actually the limiting or the factor that's causing the issue, if that makes sense. If you know what the hand means to you, the hand, what it actually means to you, without me explaining that to you. If you know, so any issue with the hand, then we know that it's a subconscious issue going on. Yeah, but we're gonna touch that stuff in the future. Right, so Shirley, sorry everybody. Shirley, you have a question, my dear?
Yeah, you mentioned that the cortisone steroid injection that one gets for the frozen shoulder, if one keeps repeatedly getting it after a while, it's
not for
it
frozen
weakens
shoulder.
the shoulder.
For the shoulder, not specifically frozen shoulder, but for
Oh,
any
right.
inflammation
For the
like
pain,
rotator cuff.
yes.
Yeah.
For the pain. After a while, it weakens the muscles, or
Too much. That's why when they give the corticosteroid injection,
yes,
there's a certain time that has to pass by.
yes,
What happens is sometimes people can get a little bit over reliant, and this is more in the past where they wasn't conscious on the time frames, and they realized that it caused problems by getting too much of the injection. With the injections, the main purpose of the injections is you have it as a means to an end. You have it to clarify, okay, this is going to mark the start of an intervention that follows through.
yes.
If you get into a habit of just taking it just for pain sake wise,
yes,
then that it can lead into that negative cycle, and if anything, you can cause more damage to it because you're just stopping your body from acknowledging the pain. So you're doing things through the pain, and the pain is always your best friend anyway. But then you're taking that friend that's telling you the right thing. You're saying, "You're annoying me. Go away now." And now your friend is like, "Fine, well, if you want me to go, well, now this is where you are right now. In a worse situation. So that can be the case. Was there something with your experience, or you just mindful?
no. My sister-in-law keeps getting these injections, but I don't think that she is given any form of physio, because once you said it's to help one to reduce the pain so that one is able to do the exercises. But I don't think she's doing the exercises.
No,
she's not given any indication of what she should be doing. It's just to relieve the pain, and that's it. And she keeps going back every time the pain flares up.
I see. Yeah, she wants to kind of get into a cycle where she has to take control of the pain. So if she does take the injection, she'll be in a better position to strengthen it and not wait for the next flare up to then take more injections for it.
Yeah.
Because as she gets older, as time passes, the pattern can become a little bit more frequent, and then that leads to further degeneration of the area potentially.
And she's got problems with her hands, where her hands get quite swollen and very, very painful. And I'm wondering if that has an effect on, we just don't know why, you know, the hands get that painful. And, you know, and I believe she's getting injection. Well, that's the only thing to relieve the pain. Again, if one thing leads to another. So, you know, we would really like to advise her, but we don't know what where to go with it.
Yeah, well, if she's in our facilities, might also send her our way.
Yeah, but she's
I'm
no
sure
longer, she lived here for many, many, many years, but now she's moved to the Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be good therapists, hopefully in the Caribbean, I
Well,
would imagine.
it's in Dominica. I don't know. She's never mentioned anything like that.
Okay, no, I see. I mean, she could either do online consultation with us, or it's just a way of presenting her the information. I think maybe she becomes aware, maybe share this video with her. um, then she will see that there's other things that she can do. But again, in the Caribbean, there's so much natural stuff. I know as time and decades are passing, people are getting less in touch with tradition, and medicine's changing, people are eating bad and all these things. But she's just got to focus on the way she's going to break that cycle. If she's not ready to break the cycle, or
oh yeah, she would definitely like to, because it's her hands. She would really like to be able to break the cycle. And the curcumin that you mentioned, because she's got a lot of land and it's cultivated land, and she's got someone working on the land. And I believe that she grows the turmeric as well. And you mentioned turmeric. Do you think that could help?
Yeah, no, I think it can help. But again, it's with everything else. And I know with the curcumin, like for example, the one in Baldwin's, I don't know what process they use, but they kind of refine the best parts of that turmeric. I think the curcumin, they do a derivative where it's very potent, basically. So it might just be easier to send a few things from Baldwin's, or, a health store here, if you're unsure of what ones to get over there. Definitely, if I don't know your locality, but if you...
She would grow the turmeric, but then the turmeric is not, because the turmeric contains the curcumin.
Yeah, it might not be as potent. I don't know what
it
process
might not be. Okay, all right.
But I definitely know that the one they sell it in Baldwin's helps, full stop. I just know that.
The pain?
Yes, definitely.
With pepper, with pepper, with...
No, it's just curcumin. If you go in there, it's a specific bottle with yellow tablets.
Right.
And I have opened one of the tablets, and it's very, very fine. If you open it and put it on your hands will be yellow for
yellow. I use
for the
turmeric every day. Yes, I know. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So I will inform her.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation.
You're more welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Is there another hand up there?
Alan wants to ask a question. You there, Alan?
Hi, Alan.
Let me unmute.
Oh, you unmute already.
Hello there.
I unmuted you.
Hi.
Hi there.
Yeah. Excellent presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question. Regarding shoulders, for myself, when I'm stressed, I feel a lot of stress in my shoulders. So is that, and it feels as though it's the muscles, but it could be nerves, or are there certain receptors in or pressure points in your shoulders why I'm getting to feel this stress in my shoulders. I don't know if anybody else gets stress in their shoulders, but for me, that's where I hold the stress.
Okay. I mean, in to answer to your question, is it nerves? With nerves, there's usually three to are you getting any numbness, pins and needles, burning, electric symptoms at all?
No, it just feels as though my shoulders are really rising up to my ears. You know,
I see.
it's
I- If
it's
if
my
you're not
form of.
yeah, if you're not getting those symptoms, then the good thing is it's unlikely to be the nerve. Nerve pain is very specific. You've got two types of pain, somatic pain and neuropathic pain. Somatic pain is just a everyday kind of like if someone punches you in the arm, less somatic pain. If you're feeling tension, less somatic pain. But nerve pain is when the nerves are being compressed. And throughout nerve pain, you will always get burning, tingling, and stuff like that. So it doesn't sound like it's a nerve pain. Um, but in regards to what was there more to your question as well?
But you see,
Um,
hold on, Alan. You see as well, Christos, because you say
Mhm.
that it's still nerves, isn't it? The muscle spindles.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the receptors. So the muscle spindles are more working in directly to, for example, like the percussion gun
Hmm.
or the vibrating gun. So that's why sometimes the muscles can relax because you're shaking up the nerves and shaking up the muscle spindles. And the muscle spindles are basically you got the muscle fibers and then you've got muscle fibers in the muscle itself, which are nerves wrap around it, which are called muscle spindles. Now, these muscle spindles are detecting the tension and the length.
Yeah.
And that's why, in regards to everything getting tighter,
And I do think,
sometimes you can
yeah, I think that
get
gives,
that reflex going on.
I think it keeps that, maintains that kind of constant back tone. You know, like
Mhm.
that radiating discomfort.
Mm.
Still nerves though. That's the only reason I wanted you to explain that. It's because even though you say that, because I know from a
Mhm.
clinical point of view, we're not observing the muscle spindles as an issue, as a
No,
neurological problem, so we don't go down that avenue. But it's still good to be aware.
no.
Yeah, still good to be.
Yeah, I mean, then, yeah, in that case, I mean, you can't separate the nerve from anything in that case,
Yeah.
but it's more from a symptomatic point of view, um, because you've got the dorsal scapular nerve at the back. So depending on the type of pain you're feeling, you can put in them two categories. But even though you put in the two categories, everything's still interrelated.
Yeah.
And what happens with even the rising of the shoulders? Yes, you're right. If you're looking at it from the muscle spindle level, everything is a little bit more hyper excited, and then you get like trigger points in the area. So when you're looking at the trigger points, they say it's to do with the flow of calcium and everything being kind of trapped in the area, and that's where you get even further knotted and even further tension because now you've got a whole imbalancement of
Right.
systems which will create that further tension.
Upon systems. You've got the
Definitely,
brachial plexus, isn't it,
definitely.
Christos? You've got the brachial plexus amongst all of what you just described there.
Yeah. And again, if you strain an area or with tension, sometimes you can, feel like with the extra tension, even slight movements and pressure, you can add more tension to these nerves, which can, add a little bit more further tension to that area.
Yeah.
In regards to your shoulders, do you find that it gets tighter throughout the day, or is it something where it's just a background tightness?
if I have a stressful day, or I have a
Mm,
stressful few days, or I'm under stress in any way, everybody feels the stress somewhere, I
Yes,
assume.
yes, yeah.
For me, it feels as though my shoulders get really tighter.
It's your
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, um, not painful, but just tightness. Yeah.
Okay.
And that tightness, I thought that would be the muscles that are getting tight.
Mm.
Yeah. So the question was,
Mm.
is there anything within your shoulders that
Mm.
correlates to stress?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. One of the biggest stress muscles is the upper traps. So that upper trap will come all from your clavicle and it kind of makes its way around. And it's that part there. And what happens as well when we get stressed, the way we breathe changes because from my understanding of my body, I, I can't breathe very deeply and in a relaxed state and be stressed. It's either I'm breathing very shallow up here, and the more shallow, because I've lost focus on just awareness of, just being, I turn into more, okay, doing on the computer, reports, this, that. The breathing rate changes. And as we change, we're not breathing, we're not expanding the whole lungs, we're breathing up here. In extreme stress now, people start to, I mean, I'm talking about extreme stress to the point where, people are having huge anxiety attacks or, panic attacks or asthma attacks or in a serious health condition where they're stressing and they're breathing through their neck muscles. So it's like the more stressed we are, even unconsciously, the more we're using all of these areas to breathe. Whereas when we're breathing a little bit lower down, we get more of an expansion and we're getting a sort of a massage effect that's happening on all our organs. So I like to do lots of massage on clients, but I can't massage their kidneys or their liver, but they can. And by breathing in deeply, you're massaging all these organs. You're releasing all these trapped energies in all these ways. So there's definitely a correlation between breathing, stress, and tension. And
sure.
I would say, yeah, practice the deep belly breathing. Maybe check out Sahu's online classes
Oh, but Alan
or
takes part.
physical classes.
So
Oh,
Alan,
you're taking part. Okay. All
mm.
right. So yeah.
So Alan, do you
Then in
know
that case,
that tension this go down if you focus your breathing on your lower dantian?
It does. It does. That's a way of relieving. At the end of the day, at each day, with heavy breathing or not heavy breathing, deep breathing and relaxing, it takes away any stress. Yeah.
mm,
So
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Alan, how long have you been doing the classes for?
Well, since they started.
Oh, like 10 years ago or
Oh, the
so?
Tai Chi.
No.
Yeah.
The Wednesday classes.
Yeah,
Oh no,
yeah.
he's been
How long
doing.
have you been doing Tai Chi?
Hmm.
About a year
The,
now.
the, the, yeah, no, that's good. And the reason I'm asking, because I've been doing Tai Chi on and off with Sahu for a little while, and at different stages, and the more you practice, you become aware in different ways.
Hmm.
So, although there was a stage I was doing the deep breathing exercises, and yes, I felt good. What really took it to another level for in my personal development was the ability to excel with an expanded belly. So even though, everyone's at different levels, so it doesn't mean just because you've done the Tai Chi for a year or a month or 10 years, it doesn't matter. It's as different parts of awareness comes with the practice, that's when you really start to appreciate the different levels of what it does. And then that also helps with, just the overall relaxation. So it's an interesting concept. Like Manly P. Hall said, which I love this analogy, he was describing about life and experience. And he was talking about life and experience in a way where he described it to the unfolding of the petals in the flower,
Yeah.
and there's a kind of very direct beingness to that, which I find interesting.
It's all about the unfolding of the pressure, as you say, the undoing of the opening of the petals. But that stuff we're talking about just made me think about the thoracic outlet and the breathing and all the space there through that tension, the restriction in the fascia and the connective tissue, compressing again the brachial plexus. And who knows where that goes, whether it's up the head, down the back, down the arms, to the fingertips, into the chest, into the ribs. Who knows where that referred pain goes from pressure shift, like what Christos was referring to there. I was envisioning the releasing of that space there. So many different ways to release these areas. So 2 exercises, Christos, then. You got any exercises there? Because you never answered that one before we finish.
Is that
was from
2 exercise? Is that Jamie's question?
Yeah, from the beginning there.
2 best exercise for building the supporting muscle for those like me that like to sit at a desk all day. A nice one, Jamie. I like the rotator cuff exercises because one, they're simple. You don't need a lot of weight for them, and if you do need a lot of weight for it, and you can still do them well, you're definitely on a different level. But for example, just getting a band, sitting, you can do the sitting on your desk, and then just simply just doing like these exercises here.
Yeah.
Another one is for a little bit of scapular control. You can put a band around your arm, keeping the shoulders back, and then raising it up, and then raising it down again. These are 2 simple ones that you can do, and you will feel the tension throughout. Or refer to some of the Tai Chi exercises.
Yeah, as we're talking Theraback technique. I think the 2, demonstrate them for me, please, Christos. The one where you're above the head, and you're doing that one there. Where you're behind the back. And then the one where you're behind, and you're doing that movement there. Yeah. That's a nice one as well. I think maybe take that one up. And then the other one where you place the hand behind your back. You get 4 exercises, as there's 2 of us there. Yeah. Right. I think yeah. I like to give those 2 when we're moving up as well, depending upon the stability of the shoulder joint. Increase the range and the flexibility of it, because we're demonstrating stability. All right. So any other questions there before we wrap it up? We're on good time today. So any questions before we leave? We shall be returning in 2 weeks. What are we covering in 2 weeks, Christos? We'll let everyone know.
In 2 weeks time, we are. I'm saying this just slowly so I can find it at the same time.
Oh, you're good. I'm glad it works like this.
We got quite quite excited, and we've done so much rearranging and adding and stuff. But the next one we're gonna do is sound therapy on the 13th of April.
Yeah, sound therapy. Yeah, that should be really interesting because there's a lot of recent research and there's a lot of technology out there going into the soundtrack.
Mm.
Yeah, so we definitely go into this, give a nice deep overview. Yeah. All right. Have a wonderful evening, family.
All right, good night, all, and thank
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome, all.
Thank you. Bye bye.
To
All
poo,
right.
guys.
Bye. Nice to have you all.